In February of this year, I got back into creating music of my own. Fast forward to late April, I announced in a video that I was in the process of making an EP. In March, I opened up a Bandcamp page, and this is where I'll be sharing my music alongside my SoundCloud account. I currently only have one track up on Bandcamp, but I have a debut EP in the works. Not too long after publishing said video, I finalized and released the EP, Drifting, to my Bandcamp page. Here, I'll be discussing the presentation of the project, the individual tracks, and my thoughts on the EP as a whole. With the introduction out of the way, let's dive in. Alright, Drifting. So, why that title? Well, it's half because there are two versions of the track Catch My Drift included in the download, and half because I liked how the name sounded. I didn't come up with a name for the EP until I finished all the music for it. Before then, I just referred to it as Debut EP. The picture used as the cover was taken at a beach in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The stylized text at the bottom right was modeled after Vectroid's album Starcalc. As for the music itself, it's mostly instrumental and draws inspiration from a handful of different genres. The intro was retooled from an old MIDI cover I made several years ago. In a way, I did some self-sampling here. I took selected snippets from the original cover and made some edits to them. This includes rearranging, pitch shifting, looping, and at one point I even reversed a snippet. I'll admit my chop job here isn't the smoothest, but I'm still pretty happy with what I came up with. My favorite part of this track is the first 15 seconds with those chorus-covered synth pads. That section in particular sounds very pretty to me, and the pianos sound nice too, even if they are quite clearly synthesized. The ascending vibraphone sample that appears at the end of the track wasn't in the original MIDI cover. That's a sample I took from a DJ mix that I had lying on my laptop for some time. I decided to incorporate it here because I thought it would make for a nice addition. I think this track is overall a pleasant way to start the EP. It carries a nostalgic and peaceful mood. Following this cut, we have Thick Fog. I'd say this track is my personal favorite from the EP. It's primarily built around a vocoded loop, lo-fi hip-hop-esque percussion, and a simplistic sub-bass arrangement. Towards the middle of the piece, I switched out the vocoded loop and replaced it with an electric piano section I played. I sprinkled in a handful of other samples in this track as well, most notable of which being the vocal samples that bookend the track. These vocal samples were lifted from the 1953 movie Glen or Glenda, which to my knowledge is in the public domain. Glen or Glenda was written and directed by Ed Wood. Wood himself appears in the film under the pseudonym Daniel Davis. Most of the parts I sampled were of him speaking. If you don't know, the movie is a multi-genre, semi-autobiographical work about cross-dressing. I generally find old movies interesting, and this one stands out to me for multiple reasons. Anyway, I think these samples fit well, and they help give the track some more character. Thick Fog already has a hazy vibe sonically, but the Ed Wood samples add a layer of mystique to the track. I especially like the introspective ones that I closed the track out with. Wood's acting sounds very genuine here, and given that he was a cross-dresser in real life, that should come as no surprise.
My mind's in a muddle, like in a thick fog. I can't make sense to myself sometimes. I thought I could stop wearing these things. I tried, honestly, I tried. I haven't had a stitch of them on for nearly 2 weeks until tonight. Then I couldn't stand it anymore. My mind's in a muddle, like in a thick fog. I can't make sense to myself sometimes. I tried, honestly, I tried. Then I couldn't stand it anymore.
After this, we have Catch My Drift, which is a hip-hop flavored vignette comprised entirely of samples. I named this track Catch My Drift because there's a sound effect of a car drifting present in the mix. Anyway, for this track, I was inspired by Oneohtrix Point Never's Replica album. For those who aren't familiar, Replica is a 2011 ambient/plunderphonics record that utilizes several samples of 80s and 90s TV commercials. Tracks like Power of Persuasion and Sleep Dealer are primarily composed of chopped up, pitch-shifted, looped, and rearranged samples from a single commercial. Those two tracks in particular were the biggest inspirations behind Catch My Drift. Aside from the subtle organ sample that comes in occasionally, Catch My Drift is completely made up of samples from a 30-second TV advertisement. I'll leave it up to you to identify what commercial I sampled. If anyone finds it, I'd love to see a recreation like the ones I do in my own sampling videos, but I digress. Anyway, I employed the same sample manipulation methods as described before. On the Bandcamp download for this EP, I included an alternate version of this track called the Lower Fi Mix. This version of the track was actually made first, and it has a different ending than the final EP version. I found a higher quality version of the source commercial after the fact, so I ended up remaking the entire track from scratch for the EP proper. I didn't want my efforts to go to waste, so I included the earlier version as a download-only bonus. Interestingly, despite the Lower Fi version generally having poorer audio quality, hence the subtitle Lower Fi Mix, some elements in the mix can be heard clearer. Next up is the bassy and percussive Aqua Vela. This track begins with a field recording of waves rolling and crashing against the sand. This recording was made last year while I was on vacation at the same beach seen on the EP's front cover. Excluding the following cut, Frame, this was the first piece completed for the EP. I used a handful of audio effects on this track. For instance, I use a heavy low-pass filter towards the beginning, a quick high-pass filter right before the synth chords come in, and this weird wobbly effect at the end. I originally recorded a 50-second synth solo to close the track out with, but I chose to excise it because it didn't fit at all with what came before it. I do like the arrangement I came up with though, so perhaps I'll reuse it for another project. Following this cut, we have the aforementioned Frame, which is by far the shortest track in the bunch. It's a simple little synth doodle that I put together years before I began work on anything else included on the EP. I named it Frame in reference to its super short length, as in a motion picture or animation, a frame is just a single image displayed very quickly as part of a larger whole. There's not much to say about this track given that it's not even 20 seconds long, but the synth tones sound cool and a bit mysterious. In stark contrast to Frame, the EP closes with the 6.5-minute microphone blessing. I wanted to make a longer track with lots of different hooks and ideas. I think I accomplished what I wanted to do without having the various sections clash with each other. This is another track that's composed almost entirely out of samples, be it loops, stuff from sample packs and CDs, etc. There are two moments where I even did some DJ scratching on the samples. One that I'd like to highlight is the vocal sample used as the transition between the electric piano heavy section and the 8-bit video game-esque switch-up. This was taken from a 1950s film showcasing an early synthesizer.
This is music with a strictly electronic beat. This is music with a strictly electronic beat.
When I first found this clip, I thought that line would make for a perfect sample, and I'm happy I was able to fit it in.
You have to let me sample that.
For my first attempt at making one, I'm pretty happy with how this EP turned out. There are a few things that I think I mixed too low, but other than that, I don't have any major complaints with the project. Sure, some of the tracks on it are very simple, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're interested in listening to the full EP, I'll have a link to it in the description. I have more music both planned and in the works already. Drifting is only the start of what I'd like to post to Bandcamp. About a month after releasing the EP, I bought an audio interface. With this, I'm now able to record sounds directly from the hardware synth and drum machines I own. On top of that, I've since gotten my hands on the DAW Ableton Live, and I'm really pleased with it. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.